we can I'll say just like turn it off and we'll get into it a bit and then hopefully it starts working
I'll say just like
soon ish.
turn it off and we'll get into it a bit
And
and then
every time we
hopefully
get started,
it starts working.
we have this
I'll say
echo
just like
on my end.
ish.
So we're always troubleshooting.
Yeah. Every
Give me
time
one
we get
second.
started, we have this echo on my end. So we're always.
All right. There we go. Cool. We should be good now. Echo's gone, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Fantastic. Fantastic. What would we be without technical difficulties? But hello, everyone. Welcome back around the herd. We're back. It is Thursday. We're here every Thursday with more information. Uh, Today, we want to highlight what we believe to be a black unicorn in our community. So we've got Paul here from Phreshly, who we're going to be interviewing, telling you all about his founder origin story, what the company is that he's building, and then how you all can actually invest if you decide to become an angel investor into his startup. So we are going to maybe wait just another 30 seconds for things to warm up, for people to funnel on in. But we are actively streaming on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course, we will be posting the recording to this on our own website afterwards. So make sure that you subscribe to our newsletter. And you just have to visit the website that's on the bottom of the screen here, www.bv.partners. And you can subscribe to our newsletter for free, watch all of the interviews that we have, listen to them podcast style as well. But we really just want to continue to create this platform where we highlight amazing entrepreneurs that are coming out of our community, but then also educate our community members on how you can be an active investor in the startup ecosystem. So, with that being said, Paul, welcome. Thank you for joining us. How are you feeling today?
I am feeling incredible. Thank you for having me.
Of
Such
course,
a pleasure to be here.
of course, of course. And man, so there's one thing I didn't tell you before, is that our team at BVP actually tuned into your pitch for the Twitch pitch.
Oh, wow.
We yeah, we all watched you live, man. You did your thing. Congrats on
Thank you.
coming out with the win.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. No, I think it's always incredible to sort of like share the founder story, right? I think with what we're building at Freshly it's not just building a lifestyle brand, but it's really centered around education. And I think there's a lot of nuances into our why. And it's always great to share that story as to why we're building what we're building. And I'm always down to share that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we appreciate you for it. And man, like I've only known you for a little bit, but I've learned a lot from you. Like you might be the most efficient like teacher and mentor that I've ever met, because we connected on Twitter,
Yep.
and you were just super open to meeting, right? And we DM'd, hopped on a call. We're like, here's what we're doing. Like, want to know what you're doing, and you gave me all these resources that were incredibly helpful. So thank you again. I want to thank you publicly for just being an entrepreneur who truly does lift as you climb. But before we get into what you're up to now, let's talk about the origin story. Where are you from, Paul?
Yeah, I'm originally from Ghana, West Africa. I was born in Ghana, moved to America in 2000, and sort of like this greener pastures that everybody looks for, right? Especially most of us immigrants, whether you're from the Caribbean, from the continent, or you're from like Asia. I think there's a common thread of what was put in place in this country, by our forefathers before we got here. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. He's like, what do you think about your Black experience in America? And I said, well, I think there was, people here before myself, right? Specifically around, civil rights, in the days where our history wasn't as, incredibly beautiful as it is today, right? Through a lot of plight. And so I think that opportunity for my father to have to then come and then myself and then my siblings is something that I hold as a torch in front of me. in everything that I do. I think that's the origin story of like, a kid growing up in Ghana, coming to America, like the movie, and trying to build something in this space.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. And definitely going to get into how, Black history has impacted the brand. But what were you up to prior to founding Freshly? I believe you have a lot of like customer success type of experience. What got you into that field specifically?
Yeah, I think, my background has been very sort of like untraditional. I broke into quote unquote working in tech at Yammer. This is
Mm,
before it became sexier and for people to sit on, Twitter and Instagram and say, "Hey, let me teach you how to get a six-figure job in tech," and all that fun stuff. I actually started Yammer as an SDR. So essentially, like first line defense, making phone calls to prospects, trying to get them to buy this SaaS software, which essentially internalizes all of your communication tools like within your organization and provides a lot of visibility and transparency, and as a layer of communication. Right, this is like Slack before Slack. And then I had an incredible career there. I think 3 months later of like basically picking the phone and calling people, I will hear the words customer success. Right, these were people from the post sales team that will hold your hand through the entirety of your contract with any SaaS partner and get you to like sort of like the promised land. And it's really about one thing, which is change management. So company X buys this platform. What are the specific feature sets they're using within their product to say, hey, there's ROI here, therefore we're going to continue paying for this. If you look at SaaS, you sell the platform to a customer, but if the CS team is not there to hold the hand, make sure that there's implementation, there's usage, there is adoption, then nobody's going to touch the product. Therefore, there's going to be churn. So it's sort of like a consultant work, right? And I
mm,
really, really enjoy that. I think that's where I realized that, whoa, I shine in this, right? I enjoy sort of like teaching people, how to get the best of what they paid for. It's the change management. It is, driving three things, which is the same thing that I take into building Freshly, which is value, adoption, and relationship, right? Value in the
mm,
sense of if you touch this product today, what do you want to see to say, okay, great, this is nice, right? I want to continue using that. Adoption in the sense of how is the organization using this basically affects change within that company. And the
mm,
relationship piece is where the human sort of currency comes in, where you're there to guide them through all of these different pieces of the adoption process, making sure that they're getting the ROI, as I mentioned. So that's something that I did for the last 14 years. I was
mm.
lucky enough to work at Yammer, left there, went to Chime, the online bank, built out the operations team there, and very recently joined another company that provided non-dilutive financing for consumer brands. So I got to be on this side of the aisle as a founder, but also helping brands raise non-dilutive capital.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, was it that experience working with consumer facing brands that made you want to jump into entrepreneurship, or did you have a venture prior to Freshly?
Yeah. So prior to Freshly in 2014, myself and now my now co-founder Ama, we founded this company called Sika, which is supposed to help Africans on the continent and in the diaspora essentially remit funds back and forth. We run the company for about a year and a half. It went really well. And we were doing a lot of things that didn't scale, right? Just like YC says. And so, as an example, Paul transfers money to Gary in Ghana. Somebody's there on the ground who go to a local bank, basically convert the currency locally into the local currency and then send it to the recipient. To the consumer, you thought, wow, that's a very fast transaction. But we're doing all of these things manually, right? So from a KYC perspective, from AML perspective, it wasn't necessarily hitting all of the compliances, right? That needs to
Mm,
be done for a Stripe or a Plaid to say, hey, these guys are doing the right things. So those compliance issues were the reasons why we decided to shelve the company,
mm.
and sort of like go figure out what we all wanted to do with our careers. But then, 6 years down the line, we came back together to build Freshly.
Gotcha. Wow, that's amazing. So you have a lot of fintech experience specifically.
Yes,
Gotcha,
very, very
gotcha.
early.
Yeah, early fintech.
Like the Flutter Waves and others on the continent
Mm,
today. We were super early trying to figure out, how do we become sort of like the Square Cash of
yeah.
of the continent, right? And we're light years early. But I think now there's quite a lot of incredible companies doing incredible things on the continent today.
For sure, for sure. No, that's amazing. I actually have some fintech experience myself. We won't get into all of that, but definitely know, about what you're talking about in regards to the KYC
Yeah,
and everything, and just building a fintech startup from the ground up with, without being a venture backed company is
yeah.
incredibly difficult too. So, did you happen to raise outside capital for that startup?
No, we weren't able to. And it sort of like goes back into what being a founder of color is really centered around, right? Sort of like you're building something that is really great. There is other people building that same thing where investors might find very sexy, but then for some odd reason, you're sort of like untouchable, right? It's like, what are they doing over there, right? We're
Hmm.
not very sure of that, but we can get into all of that as we continue our conversation today.
For sure, for sure. So, okay, so at what point did you think, you know what, like I don't want to do the tech startup thing again? I actually want to jump into consumer packaged goods and like ready to drink cocktails.
Yeah. So, man, there was a profound conversation I had with a friend while I was in Ghana. And, she looked me dead in the eye and said to me, like food and beverage, specifically in consumer spaces, you're calling, right? You're good
Mm,
at this. You can close your eyes and write recipes and do things that I haven't seen anybody do, but yet you work in tech. And I said, oh, like, this is what I do. Like, I really love it. And she goes, no, you're just comfortable in this, right? You live
mm,
in San Francisco, therefore it's in your backyard and you picked it up and you thought this is the thing that you should be doing. But I
yeah.
think this is your thing. And like at the time, it didn't really register. And it wasn't until 2020, myself, just like many Americans, I'm laid off. I'm sitting home. My wife and I at the time were pregnant, trying to figure out, okay, what the heck do we do? What do I do? And on June 3rd of that same year, the summer, after watching Insecure, I sent out this random tweet which simply said, yo, I just drank Prosecco with vodka and I don't know what I'm at in my house and or how I ordered 50 wings. 38,000 people thought it was funny, and it kind of like went viral. But the interesting thing, though, right, is that as people were responding, they were saying things like, "Hey, I want something that can be shipped to my home. I want something that uses upcycled ingredients. I want a real cocktail using real spirits." And I thought, that scales. Let's go and build that. That is how it really started. I knew nothing about the three-tier system. I knew nothing of compliance on, alcohol. I knew nothing about distribution. I knew nothing about, sort of like how CPG works, right? At the time, CPG was this sexy thing that you would hear on Clubhouse, right?
Mm,
Brands would sit there and they'll talk about it. And then, sort of like it segued into Twitter as, like Clubhouse at the time got, way too heavier for specific conversations. And so, yeah, Freshly was sort of like, it happened very accidentally. And to your question more specifically, me getting into consumer space was also very, very accidental.
mm. Understood. Understood. That what you said about, your friend telling you you were comfortable in a space is really profound. Like I feel like a lot of people probably can relate and
Yeah.
maybe haven't yet had that moment where they actually took time to think like, what am I truly passionate about? What am I truly gifted to do? Right. And what do I want to do with the majority of my time? So that's like homework I want to assign to everybody who's watching is just, take that to heart. Right. Like you might just be doing what you do for work because it's the thing that you're comfortable with, because it's what you were introduced to, and you didn't know all the possibilities that are out there. But when you do open your mind, these are the amazing things that can happen. So, um, Paul, before we get into the brand itself as well, like I've heard you in the past speak about the history, Black Americans, history as
Yeah.
it relates to alcohol and how that influenced the brand as well. So what part of that? You mentioned the civil rights era, but if we could go back to, I believe it's somewhere around 1933. What in history sort of inspired, what you're up to?
Yeah, no, I think America's history with consumption has always been heavily flawed by one thing and one thing only, which is education. Right? What are you consuming? Where did it come from? Um, so much so that even before prohibition and the temperance era, like W.E.B. Du Bois and Frederick Douglass even supported this movement of like banning the sale of alcohol specifically to Black and brown bodies. One, because on slave plantations, they were given the slaves a bunch of alcohol to consume, and nobody knew what exactly were they consuming, right? Fast forward to 2023. There are many times that you have gone to your favorite liquor store to buy whatever bottle of whatever it is, right? There's not a single time that anybody says, huh, I wonder what grain they use in this single malt, right? Or like, what is the difference between a malt-based liquor and actual spirits? And therefore, the way that regulatory bodies, you know, operate on how and what you put on your label, it's not very clear to the consumer today. So, as a founder, as a brand, how do you do it in a way where it's not sort of like punching down on the consumer to say, oh, you don't know any better than what you're consuming, right? Let me teach you what you're doing. Is to make it fun, to make it sort of like both light and trivial in a way. Because we all know what 1930s and 1920s America really looked like for people that look like everybody that's on this call today, right? From civil rights, from women's, rights, and everything else that sort of comes with it. And so when it came to building Freshly, the thing that we keep in mind is one, we want to bring the culinary and cultural experiences of Ghana, West Africa, marry that with the culinary and cultural experience of New Orleans into a can that you can take on a picnic date or, in your home with your partner, pour in a glass, garnish it, pretend like you made it. Nobody's going to complain. But make it so in a way where you as a consumer is thinking, wow, this is a product that I can put my personal brand behind, right? Because he uses upcycled ingredients. They're using real spirits, which is not going to make me text my ex in the morning, as we say internally very, very freely. And so that is the piece that is so important. But the important thing here to really notice that the premium can cocktail category is not clearly defined for the consumer today, right? If you think about anything premium in a can, you're thinking maybe wine or whatsoever. So how does Freshly then become this one entity that is helping define that for the consumer, for the woman that lives in New York, works at Uber, that says, hey, after, going to hot yoga, I just want to go sit in the park, have a nice cocktail in the can. That can be Freshly, right? For the guy that lives in San Francisco that says, I don't feel like going to Total Wine and mixing all these cocktails. I just want something that is super easy, that doesn't cost me time or money to make. I can just basically create, open this and have that at home. That is really the thing, right? And beyond that is to really build other products around that. So we have our cocktail infusions. We want to make our own syrups and a bunch of things that we want to make to essentially empower the consumer to say, hey, I can use 4 ingredients that Freshly made to make an incredible cocktail at home without breaking my pocket.
Amazing. So all of that has come out of really a tweet. It was inspired by that tweet. That tweet alone sort of made you realize like we should lean into this and actually make this happen.
Absolutely. I think, the entrepreneurial mind of myself and my co-founder was like, great, how do we bolster this by data? And so one of the first things that we did was we did a lot of social mining across multiple social media platforms, right? So we took a look at data on Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, essentially trying to understand what the consumer is searching for, what they posted, right? Whether it's, for yourself or your friends, I can go on Pinterest today and I can pretty much understand what my wife wants to wear on our next vacation to Spain because she's probably pinned all of that there. So all that data exists. So what we did was we took that, wrote a bunch of SQL queries around that to understand what are the specific flavors that is really leading the categories over the last X amount of months or years. And then we built our flavors around that, right? We didn't just want to build this magical unicorn that we thought the consumer is going to love. And so even in the naming convention of our cocktails is very much, sort of like made in a way where it evokes thought, right? Bay lemonade. What the heck is that, right? If you're with your family down in South or New Orleans, you're drinking bourbon, strawberry lemonade on the porch, you're having a crawfish boil. If you're in Ghana, you're probably drinking palm wine. And or if you're in the Caribbean, you're drinking rum and something fermented with that, right? So we took all of these sort of like different flavors and nuances and then wanted to really transport the consumer to a place, right? That place where you remember exactly where you were when you had that drink, that food, whatsoever it is, right? And that is an
Mhm.
entire goal of us. It's just to really create like cultural conversations around incredible cocktails.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible. So where are you at now? Right. So you launched the brand. Did you happen to go through any accelerator programs or anything like that that helped you either raise additional capital or connect with, the type of outlets that you might want to be sold in?
Yeah. So we got interest from Distal Ventures, which is backed by Diageo as like an LP. And they were sort of like our first like investment check. And then we went through Target for Founders, which is what an incredible accelerator that's out there for consumer brands looking to break it into retail preparedness, right? So that really helped quite a lot. And then we're talking to others that we'll potentially get into, hopefully in the next coming weeks or so. But our focus really for the last 2 years has been how do we build something that allows us to also leverage the data that we have. And so for that fact, we focus a lot on direct to consumer for the first 2 years. And now based on the data that we have, we're like, great, we know how we can basically move velocity in retail. Therefore, we're not ready. So this year, it's really centered around scaling more to B2B. And I think that is where, our bread and butter is going to be with regard to building this to, a multi-million dollar brand, from a growth perspective.
Hmm. Amazing. So I would actually love to dive deeper into the Target Forward Founders program because that was an accelerator,
Yeah.
right? Can you help us understand what did it take for you to apply and get accepted? And then what was the experience like being in the program? Because from my perspective, I know of a lot of founders who are applying to more tech focused accelerators, right? And oftentimes they're told, if you have some kind of physical product, investors aren't looking for that. But you're, living proof that that's not the case. So what was Target looking for in that application? And then what was your experience like going through it?
Yeah, I think Target is looking for a differentiator, right? What makes your thing very different? Um, and what I love about Target is they think about their guest experience. And the keyword is guest. You never hear a Target employee refer to their guests as customers. Like
Mm,
that's what they use, and I really love that about the way the organization sort of talks about that because I'm very customer obsessive that way. And so the differentiator of like what your product is, right? Does it evoke thought? Is it something that is innovative enough for the consumer to say, okay, I want this in my house? I think that's what Target looks like at. But what was really incredible though is the amount of time mentioned Target takes to really help you understand mass retail preparedness, right?
mm,
So if you own X coffee brand and X brand comes to you and say, hey, we want to put you in 1,500 of our stores, are you really ready for that, right? And the answer is probably not, because now you have to then produce to really meet the demand of all 1,500 stores. And I think the thing that a lot of us black founders also don't understand is we romanticize with success a lot, right? It's like, wait, we want to get our product into retail and it's there. Okay,
mm,
then what? Right? Your product is in retail. What is the sell-through rate? What is the velocity? If you're not really successful in that program, you get kicked out of that program, buybacks. Nobody wants to do that. And so the reason why, as Freshly, we didn't want to rush into retail and why the Target Accelerator was such an incredible pivotal moment for us was to really understand the moments where we feel like we're ready, right? That we can get into retail based on specific aspects that we can meet the demand for the retailer. If they
mhm,
said, hey, we're going to expand you into these other stores, that we can get there. But more importantly, we can be successful on the shelves, right? At the guest level and make sure that customers love the product. Those
mm,
two things are like super, super important than just saying, oh, look, my products are in 1,000 stores. And then you take a photo in front of the retail store. Like, okay, right? I want
mhm,
us to sometimes also just like stop fantasizing about that point of like, this is going so well, right? Retail
mhm,
is great, but once you get there, it's really tough just to make sure that you stay in and you scale in. Because
mm.
at an inflection point, if you launch and all of a sudden your velocity is not really moving, they're gonna have to clear those shelves and give that space to somebody else.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Major keys, major gems right there. So hopefully any of our CPG and food and bev founders listening are taking notes. That was dope, man. This is what I'm talking about. I learned a lot from you in a very short amount of time. So We appreciate you for this.
Yeah.
Want to get into fundraising in a second, but one more question, and before we bring on another one of our partners here as well. When it comes to Target and being on the shelves, right? How much traction are you seeing with that particular brand, and have you expanded right with any other partnerships for retail as well?
Yeah. So we haven't gotten into the retail level just yet. And the reason being is we don't want to rush that process. Right. Um, Alcohol as an example, we have our off seasons, the OND, so October, November, December. It's very slow for any sort of like alcohol brand because it's really focused around the holidays. But between now and like September, it's like the hot season of like making sure that you can sort of like move past this. So in our case, to your question more specifically, what we're doing is great. How can we drive 20% foot traffic for every single retailer that we work with? To do this, we're going to circumvent distribution. And what I mean by that is you live in Atlanta, as an example, you purchase Freshly, it will ship to your door. 24 hours later, you get an email SMS that says, "Hey, Gary, hey, Paul, Grips and Grain, Total Wine Tower down the street from you sells Freshly. Here's $3 or 3% off for your next purchase," right? What is going to drive the consumer to do is actually go to that store, right? So that's what we want to do. So leverage our DTC community to basically push like retail velocity to a point where it's not just a one-off purchase, but also like there's a lot of repeat rate. So instead of purchasing online, we want to drive that to the store. Therefore, we drive both the sort of like the typical checkout size at retail level. This is what retailers want to see, that you as a brand has skin in the game, right? What is your marketing budget to basically push it? Are you going to be doing, paid ads, out of home media, billboards, trucks, all of that fun stuff? I think these are the things that moves the needle to basically make sure that you're depleting things off the shelf. And the way that we look at things is two things: depletion versus non-depletion. Depletion is we're moving things from the shelves, everything is going great. Non-depletion is we're doing a lot of sort of like brand awareness activations to, again, the outcome is drive traffic to the retail store. So everything that we do, events, whether it's online and offline, it really has that one outcome and goal, which is push customers to the store, let them purchase, right? Clear the shelves. They then reorder 45 days later, their success. And then they'll be a really, really great retail partner for you. So that's the effort that we want to put in to make sure that we continue to be successful and succeed at scale in retail.
Yep. I think it's brilliant. Sounds brilliant to me. I'm ready to just, throw my money at you. So appreciate you again. I'm going to bring up our other partner B here as well. Make sure everybody's here on the screen. So we got B, who's based in Dallas. Alexander's based in DC. Paul, you're in Atlanta, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
And I am in Philadelphia. So we are around the herd for real, all around the country. But Paul, as we mentioned, right, like our show and part of our mission with the company is to empower entrepreneurs, right? Give them a platform to tell their stories like you've been doing. And we're gracious for your time. But we also want to educate our community on what it means to be an investor in your community, right? Like we believe that entrepreneurs like you are truly Black unicorns in the making. And you have graciously opened up an opportunity for everyday people to invest in your startup, right? And we've been telling our community, like, this is what we're all about, right? It's all about helping entrepreneurs create successful businesses, helping them scale up by investing in them. And then, when we're successful, we reinvest in our communities in the ways that matter to us. So, just to bring that full circle, what we want to do now is highlight the fact that you are actively crowdfunding on wefunder.com. And we're gonna get into the details in a bit, just to understand, what exactly that means. And of course, we have to premise this by saying none of this is investment advice. This is not a recommendation to invest in any particular company. This is not an endorsement to invest in any particular company. This is simply for educational purposes only. So, with that being said, Paul, why did you decide to open a WeFunder round and allow everyday people to invest in Freshly for as little as $100?
Yeah, I think it's really empowering our community of advocates to one be a part of the wealth creation process, right? But I think it importantly too, though, is like putting the brand in front of people. There's these two things that you probably have heard me say time and time again. It's around like transparency and visibility. Like, what are you building, right? What does it take to get to the success point? And I don't want to like work in silos. And or just have my blinders on and say, hey, I'm going to stay in this lane. That's all I'm doing, and nobody else can come sit with us. And so this is an opportunity to not only just put the brand in front of people, but also giving them the opportunity to be a part of this building, journey of Freshly, right? If you look in the alcohol space with regard to RTDs, we are the only Black-owned RTD brand in the market, specifically when it comes to premium. Um, we share the same, like investor as like Ciroc. They have a canned product also. And if you look at the space, it's growing 200x, and it's on track to do 146 billion by 2035. So why not bring people along this journey with us in that process of, building a category, bolstering a category that doesn't even exist, right? And clearly helping us define that for the consumer today.
Hmm. Amazing, amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that we just share a QR code for people to visit your WeFunder campaign page and make their own decision if they would like to invest or not. But Alexander B, you guys have been prepped for this moment. So I know you got questions. we, Paul, what we do with the show is, most times we're just reviewing campaign pages
Yeah.
without the founder being on, right? So now we actually have a campaign page that's up and live. Fellas, based on the questions that we've asked about different companies before, what questions do you have for Paul in regards to the opportunity to invest on WeFunder?
Yeah, I'll start it off just with I'm a vision guy, right? So, what does success look like for you? Like, let's say you do hit your goal on WeFunder, right? What's that next step or next vision that you would like to do when everybody
Yeah.
gives you the money that you need, right?
Yeah. No, this is the question I ask myself every day, right? Like it's what is success as defined by what we're building today? And the answer is to build one of the best alcohol brands within the United States. That is backed by a community of advocates, not just because the liquid is great, but also it's just really being built by amazing people, for the simple fact that we truly just want to transport our customers into a place. But to answer your question more specifically, though, I want all of us on this call to look back at this 3, 4, 5 years from now and say, "Holy crap! Like, we didn't know this was going to be a potential blue chip company, right?" That is the goal. Um, you know, Maybe one day Diageo or Pernod Ricard or Anheuser-Busch is going to come and knock on the door, and I want to be sitting at a coffee shop or a bar in Manhattan with everybody on this call and saying, "Yeah, we got here, right? It
That's
took
right.
this to get here," but also to be able to recycle that back to founders that look like ourselves, to be able to get them to that next level. That is the goal. Um, I am not kind enough to say that I want to take a hammer and break down this door and let in other founders because I know the struggle, which is why this campaign is so important as well.
Amazing. I love it. I love it. So when we're sitting in BVP Cafe in
Yep.
Manhattan,
Come
you know
on.
what I mean? You see what the hoodie says. The hoodie says invest like Hove.
Hey,
The hoodie says invest like Hove. And Jay-Z is an investor.
Yeah.
You know, what'd he say? Oh, he got a lot of sayings, but
I was about to say,
uh
please do.
so Jay-Z is an investor, or actually was an investor and owner in Ace of Spades
Mm.
Champagne, right? I believe he may have sold off his equity stake. Is that
Yeah.
true, Paul?
Yeah, yeah. And like if you look at the space of alcohol, everybody's getting into it, right? There's The Rock, there is Kevin Hart, there is everybody else. And what I love about what we're doing is the fact that we're staying in this lane and building a category that is, one, is category defining. And two, it's a category that is growing incredibly fast, right? You know, not to mention Ciroc again, they got into RTD, right? Every single brand that you know out there is making their own canned cocktails. Why? That's where the consumer is going, and we're already there. We're first to market, specifically as Black founders, and so it's really, really incredible in what we built. It's something I'm very, very proud of.
Incredible. The story is powerful, man. Like it's incredible just listening to you. I can't say thank you enough, because this is what we're here for. You know what I mean? We know Black unicorns exist. We know y'all are out there, and it's just beautiful to hear you tell the story of, again, why you got started, like why you're doing it for the community, and how far this can really go. And that's also why we come up with these sayings like invest like Hove, right? We want our community to understand it's not just about, aspiring to be a basketball player or aspiring to be a rapper, right? It's like you can aspire to be those things, but you should also be an investor in your community and understand that these are industries that we can have equity in. And when a company like Phreshly is able to be successful, right? Merrily eating off these streams, as Hove said, so it's very real. There's a real tangible way to get in on the ground floor of an opportunity that could potentially, create some form of wealth for the owners, the investors, and generations to come, right? All of this is, it's a highly risky investment, right? It is a startup company. But we want more people that look like us, to your point, also playing in the private markets, investing like a venture capitalist, being angel investors, and having a seat at the table in this way. So if you are interested in checking out the campaign page, be sure to scan that QR code up top. It'll take you to the WeFunder campaign, and you can review the deal for yourself. Again, we're not going to recommend that anybody invest, but we want to highlight the fact that the opportunity is available. All right, I'm done with my little commercial break.
Cool.
Alexander B., do you have any other questions?
Yes, I got plenty. So I might have already missed this, but the parts that I did grasp from you, right? What I would like to know is, where did the awareness come from in regards to when it gets to retail? Because to your point, I think as entrepreneurs or founders, you have this goal of, hey, I'm in the stores, right? But you're conscious enough to be like, no, it's not just about being in the store. Once you get to the
Yep.
store, like that's kind of like when the real work starts, right?
Sure,
So
sure.
I want to say, like, where did that awareness come from? Is that just from sheer experience? Is that from doing the accelerator that Gary talked about? Or
Yeah. I am obsessive with like details on like talking to people, who our future retail partners are, right? To that, as an example, I went to 20 retailers in like the Atlanta metro area, just interview them, right? What are you seeing? What are the soccer moms buying? How many times a week do they come here and buy this product, that product, that product? And I think based on that, then I come home, sort of like, write a little SQL query and like kind of like, draw these tables around that. Because one, I'm very like data obsessive, but two is, how do you then build an incredible product backed by that awareness, right? And it's something that you do in a way where it becomes both fun and sort of like evokes thought, right? As an example, if you're looking at the can of Freshly, on the bottom of the can, one of them is pink, the other is purple, right? It's literally an Easter egg. So Bay Lemonade has that pink brand, and that's the color of the drink. And then Gidem, which we use blueberry for, is like the color of the drink is like it's purple. And like when I tell this thing to consumers, they go, "Oh, I didn't know this. Like, why did you do that?" I'm like, well, maybe you go into a party and you're wearing a white T-shirt. Don't you want to know the color of the thing that's in your drink, just in case it spills? So it's like tiny little details that we hide into our cocktail, but also sort of like telling the story. I give an example. When we started building the brand, we asked people two questions. Would you rather cane sugar or agave nectar? Both things are natural, by the way, right? Because we don't use any fake things in our cocktails. And 80% of the survey respondents said, they rather agave nectar because it sounds more sophisticated. Guess where we went? Agave nectar. So if you are your bar and you saw bourbon, rose water, strawberry, agave nectar, evokes this thought in your mind of like, whoa, that sounds like an incredible cocktail, right? Let me try that. And that's the same experience that we're taking into retail. So the awareness piece that you mentioned is, how do you create a shelf talker on the shelf that says, this drink use agave. This is why we use agave instead of this. We use upcycled ingredients from minority-owned farms. Again, the consumer goes, I've never seen this before. I want to support that, right? So that is the thing that we're going to continue doing at retail level as well.
And I feel like I want to hear your experience from talking with other, how do I, connoisseurs of alcohol, right? So for us as the newer venture within to the coffee space, we started to learn and meet more connections with people who are truly coffee people. So I want to know what you've gathered from the people who are like truly alcohol people, not people who are just like party people and
Yep.
alcoholics and anything like that, but there are people who are truly, to your point, they know the agave, they know how agave is made and just the backgrounds within mixology. So
Yeah. It's a single word, and that is inclusion. Um, you know, everybody loves a fresh cocktail. I do. If you look all around me, I make my own bitters and syrups. I'll turn my thing around, right? Like, this is my R&D lab of like just like making things. So I have my own bitters and everything that I was making myself. The truth here is like, what happens is, we founders, we say we want to create something, and then we cut out the single source of truth, which is the mixologist and the enthusiasts who really love what they consume and what they enjoy. And so what we do is, I'll go to a bar, I'll talk to the mixologist, like, hey, why is, this New York sour so popular here? Why is espresso martini all of a sudden, the new girl on the block that everybody loves it, right? Why is mezcal the single spirit that everybody loves now? Why not sotol? Why not this? And so in that process, it's also bringing them in as sort of like, unofficial advisors, and saying, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about the call outs on our packaging? And I think in that inclusion of building community is how you get people to be advocates for your brand. But if you cut them out and say like, oh, I know what I'm doing, right? We were able to, innovatively like modernize a cocktail in a can. Who are you really talking to? What is it for? The thing that I always say to myself, and my co-founder says this too, is like, if it's not for our customers and our advocates and the people that we rely on to give us feedback, let's just pack our bags and go home. Like, we're not doing it for anybody else but them, right? It's like the people that truly enjoy this. Because we're at the end of the day, we're all like serving a common cause, which is like the consumer and the customer. So if you're not buying, then my company is not profitable. I don't have a product. And so the essence of being so customer centric, as I said in the beginning, being so data centric, is really making sure that we're building this truly as a community based sort of like product and platform. We ask all the questions. You know, why should we use tequila instead of mezcal? Peach flavors, I know for the last 9 months is leading all searches. Should we use that, right? Based on data, it says yes, but then we need to also talk to the consumers to say, is this even something that you look for when you go to your favorite bar? Like, these are all the nuance of conversations that we're having with people.
I told you, I got just like Gary, I got questions with that.
Spoken like a
So,
true customer success professional.
right. And I would say for the newer founders, the newer entrepreneurs, right? Where did you build the comfortability to, one, go out and actually talk to people? And then also on the other side, the importance behind that. Because to your point, sometimes when you first start out with building something, you have this whole idea in your head of like, this is one I put out there and everybody's going to love it. But that's not necessarily you still need people to buy it. So
Yeah.
just the importance and how to get comfortable with it.
I think the comfortable point is knowing that we are always going to be solving a problem, right? Once you get away from that, you're no longer comfortable, right? You're just sort of like, in this space of being, for a bad lack of word, like a know-it-all. Because you think like you built something and therefore like that's that. We know that, consumers are always going to want something new and exciting. So how do you continue to innovate that? And in that, I get very comfortable in knowing that there's always going to be a new change, a new trend in the way that people consume. If you look up for the last 24 months, there's an increase in like the sober curious movement, right? People that either want to decrease their alcohol consumption or stop drinking overall, right? How do you bring those people with you, right? The people that don't drink for religious reasons and health reasons, I get that, I respect it. We have our mixed roots product, which is the cocktail infusion kits that you can pour, an actual like spirits over it, or non-alcoholic spirits like, non-alcoholic gin or whatever, and you have an incredible cocktail. We have that for that specific like segment of customers. And so like everything is sort of like, how do you then build this like end-to-end cocktail experience? So to your question more specifically on like, how do you get comfortable with that? It's like knowing that problems are always going to be existing, and you're always going to find ways to like innovate around that specific problem, even if that's just that one vertical that you're staying in, right? We know that we're selling, an alcohol brand, but how do we continue to innovate it? Not just one cocktail, but also saying, okay, great, we're going to make mixers, we're going to make elixirs, we're going to make shakers that you can use to make your own things at home. We're going to create, our own rum brand or our own vodka brand, like down the line, right? Hence the name Phreshly Brands. So there's so many ways that we want to go, but I think the comfortability here is constantly talking to your customers. If it's not for them, you're not here. You don't have anything. So that for me is like the beacon that I always like hold in front of me as a torch.
I like it. I like it. And that was going to be another one of my questions. Like, what do you see outside of just the cans that you're bringing? But then you bring up like, yeah, we have so much range, right? Of like, we can do the bitters, we can even just do the alcohol itself. That's oh man, that's the beauty of it. Ooh, the next one I have, right? So we all know that the tweet went viral, right? What was the process of like, hey, this is an idea, I have
Yeah.
to act on this idea? Because I think sometimes people have these ideas but they don't act, or they're hesitant to act. What would you say to the person that has this great idea or that certain moment of, I guess, fame and then needs to transition that into like an actual product? What would you give advice to that
Yeah,
person?
I think like through the responses, the common thread was like, I want, I want to see, I would like, this doesn't exist, right? So these are all problems that I was like, oh, this is very clear. And I could relate to all of that, right? I think the common one was sort of like, yeah, I want something that can be shipped to my house so I don't have to leave. And, like, great. It's in the middle of the pandemic. I don't want to leave my house and like catch COVID or put my wife's pregnancy at risk. Therefore, I'm not going anywhere. So that was like, ding, 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 ding. Yes, I want something that can be shipped to my house. So, like, we're talking about direct to consumer here, right? So that is the go to market right there. The other piece too is like, oh, like, I want actual real ingredients. I want something that I know where the ingredients are coming from. Like, great, cool. That's a feature. They want this thing. People are like, I don't enjoy a hangover. I want actual spirits. And I go, okay, great. They don't want malt-based liquor. They want real spirits. So that's another thing. So sort of like taking all of these things, the value of it, how people were planning on like adapting this product, what would the relationship piece of this look like once you have the product in front of them, specifically from a fulfillment perspective. And that's sort of like what I really took from, sort of like those responses. But I think the bigger piece too was, something that I learned from David Sachs from Yammer, part of the PayPal mafia before, he started tweeting nonsense on Twitter these days. Which is like, start marketing your product before it's ready, right? No matter how perfect it is. And that was it for me, right? And so literally like that same week, I was setting somebody up to create mock-ups. I remember the first mock-up, you actually laugh at this. It was a drink in a jar, so it looked like a kombucha. And I remember like talking to my friends and asking them like, what do you think this is? And they go, I don't know, a smoothie. Somebody said it was a mouthwash or something. And I was like, okay, well, that's not it. And I remember going to a Whole Foods, picking up, I remember very vividly, I went there to get like baguette. And I was walking down the aisle and I saw like a canned wine and I go, that's it. We're going to put this in a can. Um, did this category exist? It did exist. I just wasn't paying attention to it because I wasn't the core, audience of that. So from then on, went to the designer and said, listen, we're going to put this in a can. And I think within an hour, he had come back with, a couple of mock-ups, and that was it. I just started tweeting like crazy about this, right? I had zero idea what the heck I was going to build. I just knew that I had this product. It was a drink in a can, and people were going to learn about it, right? And they're like, "What's your website?" So I built a type form page. It was like asking a couple of questions: What do you drink? How many times do you buy it? What's the price point? And then basically started collecting data, and then boom, I was like, "Great, let's just go register this company called Phreshly." That was that.
Nice. Yeah, no, the part that I love about that is like, bro, we just going. Like, we're not about to stop here and just write a whole business plan, just make sure like just start
No,
making stuff.
I didn't have a pitch deck. I really had nothing. It was like I just knew I had this thing. I'm gonna build it. Um, and then yeah, I think through all of like taking a look at everything that people were saying, okay, great. We have a canned product. What is the path to production? And I remember like as I was going through that, a friend was like, "Oh, are you going to use a co-packer?" I was like, "Huh, hold on." And the next day, I was at a co-packer's office, like talking through how we're going to basically commercialize it and the entire thing. So like when I say this was purely accidental, it was accidental. Like people were telling me things that they didn't even know I was looking for. Like I was needing answers for those things, right? It just started landing on my lap, and I was like, "Done, done, done, done. Let's go."
Yeah, and
Love it.
for a second, just to make sure Alex gets his time if he has any questions. One thing I do want to highlight with the story that you're putting out there for the people who are trying to start something, act quickly, right? Don't just sit on it when you get it. Like for him, they talked about a co-packer. Next 2 days, I'm at a co-packer. Like so, as soon as you get that advice or whatever, that information, act on it right then. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like, I think today I was on Twitter, and if anybody want to build this company, please go build it because the market is there. And I saw, actually no, I saw somebody tweet like furniture is expensive, and I was like, oh, I wonder how many people are talking about this. So I just searched in Twitter, expensive furniture. There were over like 1 million responses, right? And I thought, okay, cool. Furniture rental for millennials and Gen Z because people have commitment problems. There's two companies that exist today. There's Feather and there's Oliver. What they do is they allow you to buy a West Elm furniture that is beautiful in your home and you pay over a month. And I was like, great. How come somebody doesn't build a fintech piece to it where you connect your plat, basically a plat account, connect to your account, basically credit worthiness as an example. And as you pay, you earn points. You use the points to basically pay it down, and you have an incredible furniture because one, furniture is expensive. If I want, an amazing curved couch that every influencer has in their home these days, $4,000 from Crate and Barrel West Elm. I'm not trying to buy that. I rather have something that can be shipped to my home and I can test it out. I have a different design style, so does my wife. So why not be able to sort of like test things out? They'll bring it. If you don't like it, they take it away. Like there's only two companies. Both companies have raised over $36 million. There's not a single one in major cities like Atlanta or DC. Those two companies that exist is San Francisco. I think they operate in LA, and that's pretty much it, right? One went through YC. The other is like doing pretty well. So again, going back to my point, like start marketing the thing before it's ready. Like if I had, the time to build a alcohol rental, a furniture rental marketplace that allows, the younger consumer to furnish their home without having to break their pocket, I'll build that thing right now.
All right.
See,
I love it.
this is
It's coming,
what you
after
said.
the
We
Phreshly
follow
IPO.
Yeah, man. Gotcha.
Right on. Cool. So, Alex, you want to go and see if your mic is working?
Yeah. So, first off, thank you for coming on the call.
Thank you.
And this is my marketing side coming out really at data. Like you talked about, you were quick to jump on at people, but you also looked a lot at data. Wondering, were there any time got some data back and you were just, and how did you work through that the data was telling you.
Yeah. So if I understood that correctly, sort of like, taking a look at data, just making sure that it's accurate. And if the data kind of came back that it's not, something that we wanted to see, how do we act around it? Yeah. So today is a perfect example. Like I was looking at some data. We're thinking about, okay, great. As we're getting ready for retail, which are the markets that we should be looking at, right? Um, and so I looked at data on like where purchases come from for the last 2 years, and that's how we're acting around that. But something that happened that was very interesting because I lived in the Bay Area before I moved to Atlanta. So I thought, yeah, like my friends, everybody loved this thing, they were talking about it. So the Bay Area is probably the number one market. It's not. It's Atlanta. The second one is surprisingly Austin, right? I'm like, who the heck is in Austin that's buying this, right? So I'm looking at all these like different data points, like, huh? Because in my head, I thought it was the Bay, DC, Atlanta, then Brooklyn, but that's not what the data like represents, right? And like I looked at it multiple different ways, and the same answer is what it is. It's Atlanta, Austin, Brooklyn, LA is like five, the Bay Area is like seven, right? So I'm like, great. If we're picking top five markets, where I lived and where this company was first built and founded doesn't even scratch the surface, right? So do you then ignore the data and say, great, let's just put our product there anyways? No, you can't ignore that because you don't know if your product's going to do well in that very market. And so for that very sense, like, great, as we're planning events, we're going to do that in the cities that we're popular in, right? So we do something like a dinner series here in Atlanta, we'll do something in Austin, we'll do something in the DMV area, we'll do something in Brooklyn. And then we'll just start sort of like moving that around. So I think from a marketing perspective, to your question more specifically, is taking a look at where, influx of things coming from, top line funnel, and then breaking it down to make sure that we have better benchmarking. And so if we are able to, and when we launch in those markets, that there is in-market support. So as an example, if we launch here in Atlanta in retail and we say, hey, Freshly is now available in these 10 retailers. By the way, we're doing a picnic event. We do know that we're going to drive at least like 30% of people to come because like this is where our core audience are, right? So these are the things that we continue doing just to make sure that, we build an incredible company.
Right on. I love it, Paul. We love it. We love it. We're rooting for you.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, man, we want to remind our community because I think you've taught me something here as well, just around like what you call your community, right? Like not calling customers, calling them either partners or community members, or what
Yeah.
does Target call them?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Words matter. Words matter. So, for our community watching, we want to remind you that, Paul is building a company here, right? That has the potential to become successful, right? And success in this space requires access to capital. It requires resources. It requires connections and partners opening doors. So here at Bison Venture Partners, one way that we want to help support founders like Paul is amplifying the fact that he is raising investment capital from the community. Anyone can become an investor in Phreshly today by visiting the QR code up top, or the website is just wefunder.com/Phreshly. Phreshly is spelled Phreshly. And Paul, while you're here, I just need to read some of the highlights you have on your campaign page. Again, this is not investment advice. This is for educational purposes only. Phreshly, all right, raised $250,000 in 2020 after a successful proof of concept from Diageo and Distill Ventures. Doubled growth 2021 to 2022 with 365% in QOQ sales. What's QOQ?
Quarter over quarter.
Quarter over quarter. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Strong team of mixologists, tech, and e-commerce experience from MailChimp, Chime, and Y Combinator. 4.42 million projected revenue in 2023. It is not guaranteed. These are simply projections. Carried at award-winning hotels and restaurants, and on track to double on-premise accounts, unlike any other ready-to-drink cocktail. This is a $10 billion plus market opportunity in the number one fastest growing beverage category. And Phreshly plans on launching in 500 retailers by Q4 of this year. Phreshly cannot do that without investment capital. So that is why our community has to come together and support when they can, how they can, financially or otherwise. Figure out how to do your part. I know how I'm going to do my part. So after the show, Paul, I'm going to check back on the campaign page. But again, everybody, please check it out. Paul, where can our audience, our community follow you online, both, for your personal page and the brand itself?
Yep. Personal page, Instagram is wyd.paul. So what are you doing, Paul? Very simple. Twitter is the same tag, is wyd paul __. Or I am always open to answer questions via email. So my first name @phreshly.co.
Right on. We appreciate you, Paul. Again, for everyone, the link is wefunder.com/Phreshly, PHRESHLY. Check it out. Let us know what you think. If you happen to invest yourself, we would love to hear. We've heard some community members in the past have tuned into our live streams and they decide to make an investment themselves. So again, not a recommendation, but that is what we're here to do, is help our community build wealth. Paul, you are the man. You are a Black Unicorn.
Thank you.
We're going to make sure you get a Black Unicorn shirt.
Appreciate
or hoodie, whichever you choose. But listen, man, we're going to keep supporting and spreading the word, spreading the message. So we're rooting for you. Thank you again for your time. And we hope you have a wonderful night.
Appreciate it, gents. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Indeed.
Thank you. All right, y'all. Have a good one.
All right, too.